Now let's look at leukocytes or white blood cells. There are many different types of leukocytes, and they will be used to protect you against pathogens, abnormal cells, such as cancer, or foreign cells. Leukocytes will have a nucleus as well as your organelles. They do not remain within the blood very long. They only use the blood as a transport mechanism. They leave the blood by a process called diapedesis, and I will talk about that in just a minute. Recall that the levels of leukocytes in the blood are very low, less than 1% of the formed elements. This is an illustration of diapedesis. The green cell is a leukocyte. On the left, it is leaving the blood vessel by squeezing in between two endothelial cells. These are simple squamous epithelial cells that line the wall of the blood vessel. Another way that diapedesis can occur is by having the leukocyte squeeze through pores, which are called fenestrations, within the blood vessels in the endothelium. A normal range or level for leukocytes in your blood is between 4,800 to 10,800 cells per millimeter cubed of blood. Elevated levels above 11,000 cells per millimeter cubed is called leukocytosis, and decreased levels below 4,000 cells per millimeter cubed is called leukopenia. Leukocytes can be placed into two main categories based on the appearance of their cytoplasm when they are stained. Granular cytes have granules that are visible when they are stained. Agranular cytes do not have visible granules in their cytoplasm when they are stained. When studying the different types of leukocytes, you will need to be able to identify a histology image of them, as well as tell me what their functions are and whether they are a granular cyte or an agranular cyte. The saying at the bottom of the slide, "Never let monkeys eat bananas," can be used to help you remember which type of leukocyte is the most abundant and which one is the rarest. The N stands for neutrophils, L for lymphocytes, M for monocytes, E for eosinophils, and B for basophils, which are the rarest. Let's begin with the granular cytes. Neutrophils are the most abundant of the leukocytes in your blood. They make up between 60 to 70% of all the leukocytes in the blood. They are used to fight against bacteria and fungi. As a matter of fact, they are the first types of leukocytes usually to get to a site of infection. They have a nucleus that contains 3 to 6 lobes. I'll use the illustration at the bottom to demonstrate the lobes for the cell at the tip of the green pointer. This is the first lobe, second lobe, third lobe, and a fourth lobe. Neutrophils also exhibit positive chemotaxis. What this means is that they move toward certain chemicals that are released by injured tissues. They are phagocytic cells. They will eat the bacteria and the fungi. They can also carry out a process called respiratory burst. In this case, they produce superoxide, which can be converted into hydrogen peroxide and then into a substance like bleach. The hydrogen peroxide and the chemicals similar to bleach can be used to kill bacteria and fungi. In the process, however, they will end up killing themselves. Their granules store antimicrobial agents. These are chemicals that can be used to kill microbes. Pus is a collection of dead leukocytes for the most part. An interesting fact about neutrophils is that they prefer to phagocytize or eat simple sugars compared to bacteria. A patient that has a bacterial infection then should avoid eating simple sugars. This includes drinking orange juice. A second type of granulocyte are the eosinophils that make up between 2 to 4% of the leukocytes. Their numbers are elevated during parasitic and worm infections, allergies, and asthma. Their nucleus contains 2 lobes, and the granules stain red. The granules contain digestive enzymes that they release onto the parasitic worms. This is the type of extracellular killing. The digestive enzymes then will break down the parasite. The third type of granulocyte is a basophil. Recall that these are the rarest, making up only 0.5% to 1% of the leukocytes. They have dark staining granules, which really obscure the nucleus. These granules release histamine, which initiates inflammation. We'll talk about this when we get into the immune system. Also, they release heparin, and heparin is an anticoagulant, preventing blood clotting. Their nucleus is S or U-shaped. Now let's look at the agranulocytes. Recall that they don't have visible granules when they are stained. Their cytoplasm looks a pale blue. There are 2 types of agranulocytes. Lymphocytes, which make up 20 to 25% of the leukocytes, are involved in your specific immune response. It's important that you make a distinction here that the immune response is specific. I'll describe the significance of this when we cover the immune system in lecture. There are 2 types of lymphocytes. T lymphocytes that are involved in eliminating virus-infected cells and cancer cells or tumors, as well as foreign cells, such as in a transplanted organ. B lymphocytes, when they are activated, begin to divide, and most of them give rise to plasma cells, which release antibodies. We'll talk about the function of antibodies later. Notice their nucleus is either shaped like a circle or like an oval. So the nucleus is spherical with a small blue halo of cytoplasm around it. Always look for that blue halo. The second agranulocyte is a monocyte. Monocytes make up about 3 to 8% of the leukocytes. They are the largest of the leukocytes. When they leave the blood, they become macrophages. Macrophages are phagocytic cells, and their numbers are elevated when you have a chronic infection, a viral infection, or intracellular bacterial parasites. These are bacteria that live within the cell. Examples of these types of infections would be mononucleosis as well as TB. Their nucleus is shaped like a kidney or U-shaped. This slide shows you the 5 different types of leukocytes that you will have to be able to identify in histology slides. You will also need to be able to identify erythrocytes and platelets. Compare these 2 smears of blood. Notice the one on the left has an elevated number of leukocytes, so that individual has leukocytosis. The slide on the right is a normal blood smear. The 2 leukocytes there you should be able to identify as neutrophils. This concludes this module. You will have one more module for this lab.